Millionaire hires a fake date for his ex's engagement party, but she steals the show. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The gray sky hung low over downtown Austin, Texas, the streets slick with rain. Ethan Cole stepped out of his car, the city lights reflecting off the puddles like fractured glass. In his hand, he held a small, cream-colored envelope. Inside was the invitation that had ruined his week. Vanessa and Thomas request the honor of your presence at their engagement celebration. The words burned like acid. Ethan was 32 years old, the founder of a tech firm that had just gone public. To the world, he was composed, confident, and untouchable. But tonight, standing in the drizzle outside a bar that smelled faintly of coffee and old wood, he felt anything but. He walked inside and took a seat near the window. The bartender nodded in recognition. "Whiskey neat?" Ethan only nodded. He stared at the amber liquid, listening to the murmur of conversation and the rain tapping against the glass. It had been 2 years since Vanessa left him for his rival. 2 years pretending it did not hurt. Now she wanted him at her engagement party because she knew he would show up alone. That was when he saw her. Maya Tran was wiping down a table near the back, her brown hair tied loosely, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her apron was faded, her sneakers wet from the rain. There was something unguarded in her face, something he had not seen in a long time. Honesty. He watched as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and forced a tired smile at a demanding customer. When the man left no tip, she only sighed and returned to cleaning. Ethan found himself saying, almost without thinking, "Excuse me." She turned, startled. "Yes, sir? Would you sit for a moment? I have a proposal." Hip brows knit. "Sir, I am working. I will pay you for the time. Just one conversation." Curiosity won. She slid into the chair across from him, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes were wary, but her voice was steady. "All right, what kind of proposal?" He took a slow breath. "I need a date. Tomorrow night. It is a formal event. I will pay $5,000. You only need to pretend to be my girlfriend." She blinked, certain she had misheard. "I am sorry, what?" "It is not what it sounds like," he said quickly. "My ex-fiancée is getting engaged. I cannot go alone. I need someone who is real." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed softly, the sound dry but not cruel. "Real? You mean someone who is not from your world?" He smiled faintly. "Exactly." Maya shook her head. "You do not even know me." "That might be the point," Ethan said. "I am offering you a business arrangement, not a relationship." Her expression softened, but her tone stayed guarded. "And what do you get out of this, besides making your ex jealous?" "Peace," he said quietly. "Or at least the illusion of it." Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, for a brief second, neither of them spoke. Maya glanced at the empty tables, the neon sign flickering in the window, then back at him. Her shift ended in 10 minutes. Her rent was due in 2 days. Her mother's medical bill still sat unpaid on the kitchen counter. She straightened, meeting his gaze. "All right," she said finally. "I will do it, but I have 3 rules." Ethan leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." 1. No touching without permission. 2. I get paid before the event. 3. I walk away when the night is over. His lips curved slightly. "Agreed." He pulled out a checkbook and wrote the amount in careful script, sliding it across the table. Her breath caught when she saw the number. She folded the check and tucked it into her apron pocket. As she stood to leave, he said softly, "Thank you, Miss Tran." She turned at the doorway, rainlight glinting in her eyes. "Do not thank me yet," she said. "Tomorrow you might regret it." The next morning, Maya woke to the steady drip of rain outside her window. The apartment was small, barely enough for one person, and the heater rattled like it was struggling to stay alive. She sat up slowly, the events of the previous night replaying in her mind. Had she really agreed to pretend to be a billionaire's girlfriend for one night? She reached into her bag and pulled out the folded check. The neat handwriting across it still looked unreal. $5,000. Enough to pay 2 months of rent and cover her mother's next round of medication. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was her landlord. "Maya, rent was due last Friday," his voice said flatly. "If you cannot pay by tomorrow, I have another tenant waiting." Her stomach tightened. "Tomorrow, I promise," she said quickly. She hung up and leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. The smell of damp concrete filled the air. She thought of her mother, lying in a hospital bed at St. Joseph's Clinic, smiling through the pain. $5,000 was not just money now. It was time, safety, and a breath of relief. At 9 o'clock, she arrived for her morning shift at the cafe. Her coworker, Lila, raised an eyebrow. "You look like you have not slept." Maya forced a smile. "Just thinking about some bills." "Same story, different day," Lila sighed. The rush of customers began, and for the next few hours Maya lost herself in the rhythm of pouring coffee, wiping tables, and pretending everything was fine. But every time she caught her reflection in the window, she saw the same thought flicker behind her eyes. Tonight, when her shift ended, a sleek black car waited outside the cafe. It was so out of place on that cracked street that everyone stopped to stare. A driver in a dark suit stepped out and opened the door for her. "Miss Tran?" he asked politely. "Mr. Cole sent me." Maya hesitated, clutching her apron. She felt suddenly small, the noise of the city fading around her. But she straightened her shoulders and stepped into the car. The drive to downtown Austin felt longer than it was. Through the tinted windows, she watched the world change from worn sidewalks and thrift stores to wide boulevards and glittering towers. When the car finally stopped in front of a glass building, she caught her breath. The sign above the doors read, "Cole Industries." She followed the driver inside, the marble floor gleaming beneath her scuffed shoes. Ethan Cole was waiting for her in the lobby. He was dressed in a tailored navy suit, his expression calm but unreadable. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We have a lot to prepare." She looked around, feeling the weight of curious eyes from the reception staff. "This is your office?" "One of them," he said, offering a faint smile. "Come upstairs. My assistant has the wardrobe ready." The elevator ride was silent. Maya stared at her reflection in the mirrored wall, feeling out of place among the polished steel and soft music. When the doors opened, a woman in her 40s greeted them with a professional smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Tran. I am Claire, Mr. Cole's assistant." She led Maya into a suite filled with clothing racks and boxes of shoes. A hairstylist and a makeup artist were already waiting. Maya's eyes widened. "Is all this for me?" Ethan nodded. "You need to look like someone who belongs in that room tomorrow." For the next 2 hours, she was measured, fitted, and styled. The transformation was both thrilling and terrifying. Her hair fell in smooth curls around her shoulders. Her dress shimmered softly under the light. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Ethan watched from the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but not unkind. "You look," he began, then stopped himself. "Perfect for the part." She turned, half amused. "The part? Is that what I am now, a role in your performance?" He met her gaze evenly. "That is what you agreed to, is it not?" For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Maya exhaled and nodded. "Fine. But remember the rules. You do not touch me. You pay before the event. And when it is over, I walk away." "I remember," he said quietly. "I intend to keep my word." Claire stepped forward, handing Maya a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond necklace, simple but breathtaking. "It completes the look," Claire said. Maya hesitated. "This must cost more than my entire apartment." "Oh, it is insured," Ethan replied. "Just wear it." As the car took her home that evening, she pressed her forehead to the window, watching the city lights blur into gold and blue. She felt the weight of the necklace around her neck, heavier than she expected. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy with thunder. Tomorrow night she would walk into a ballroom full of strangers, pretending to belong beside a man who lived in another world. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, a quiet spark flickered. Maybe, just maybe, this was the night her life would finally change. He watched her disappear into the storm, a faint smile ghosting his lips. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something other than bitterness. He felt curiosity. And deep down, the sense that this ordinary waitress might be the most extraordinary mistake of his life. The following evening arrived with a thin veil of mist over the city. Maya stood in front of her small mirror. adjusting the diamond necklace Claire had given her. The fabric of the midnight blue gown shimmered faintly under the soft light of her apartment. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly. For hours, her mind had replayed every possible mistake she could make: say the wrong thing, spill a drink, forget the story Ethan had rehearsed with her. Now there was no turning back. A knock echoed on her door. When she opened it, Ethan was there, perfectly composed in a dark tuxedo. He held a single white rose. "For you," he said. Maya hesitated before accepting it. "You did not need to bring this." He gave a faint smile. It seemed appropriate for tonight. She placed the flower in a small vase by the door and picked up her clutch. "Let us get this over with." The ride to the Ritz-Carlton was silent, except for the hum of the car and the faint rhythm of rain against the windows. As they arrived, the sight of luxury cars and glittering gowns made Maya's stomach tighten. The doorman opened the car door, and she stepped out into a storm of flashing lights and murmured greetings. Ethan offered his arm. She hesitated only a second before taking it. Inside, the ballroom glowed under crystal chandeliers. Gold and ivory drapes framed a grand staircase, and the air was filled with laughter, perfume, and the sound of a live string quartet. Maya forced herself to stand tall. Ethan leaned close enough for her to hear him over the music. "Remember," he murmured, "you are my partner. Breathe, smile, and stay by my side." She nodded. "I can do that." They had barely taken 10 steps when a familiar voice sliced through the room. "Ethan, you made it." A woman in a silver gown approached, her smile gleaming like polished glass. "Vanessa." Her tone was smooth, but her eyes carried a hint of triumph. "And who is this?" she asked, turning to Maya. Ethan's expression remained steady. "Vanessa, this is Maya Tran." Vanessa's gaze traveled from Maya's simple clutch to the delicate necklace. "How lovely," she said, a note of condescension beneath her words. "Where did you two meet?" Before Ethan could answer, Maya spoke softly but clearly. "In the place where people usually meet, somewhere ordinary." Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. "Well," she said finally, "enjoy the evening. I am sure it will be unforgettable." As she walked away, Ethan let out a quiet breath. "You handled that well." Maya smiled faintly. "You should have warned me your ex looks like she stepped out of a magazine." He chuckled under his breath. "You look better." The evening unfolded like a slow dance. They mingled, exchanged polite nods, and endured the endless small talk of social elites. Maya did her best to play her part, offering a warm smile here, a kind word there. Every so often, Ethan would glance at her, his eyes softening in a way he did not expect. When the toast began, Vanessa stood at the microphone, her fiancé beside her. "To love that endures time and trial," she said, raising her glass. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Maya leaned closer and whispered, "Smile. She wants you to hurt. Do not give her that satisfaction." He looked at her and, despite himself, smiled. After the applause faded, Vanessa returned to their table. "So, Maya," she began, feigning interest, "what is it that you do?" Maya lifted her glass of water. "I work in hospitality. I help people feel welcome." Vanessa laughed softly. "How charming." But before she could say more, Maya added gently, "Kindness is always charming, do you not think?" For the first time that evening, Vanessa had no reply. Later, as the orchestra began to play, Ethan offered his hand. "Dance with me," he said quietly. Maya hesitated. "I do not really dance." "Neither do I," he replied. "We will manage." They stepped onto the dance floor, moving carefully under the golden light. For a moment, the noise around them faded, replaced by the slow rhythm of the music and the warmth of his hand against hers. She looked up, meeting his eyes. The world seemed still. When the song ended, applause filled the room. But Ethan and Maya did not immediately let go. Then the sound of a camera shutter broke the spell. A journalist nearby lowered his phone, smirking. Ethan's expression hardened. "Let us go," he murmured. They slipped out onto the terrace, the cool night air washing over them. From inside, the laughter of the party echoed faintly. Maya leaned against the marble railing, looking down at the glowing city below. "So," she said softly, "did we pass the test?" Ethan turned to her. "More than pass. You were extraordinary." She laughed quietly. "Extraordinary for pretending to belong somewhere I never will?" He studied her face for a moment. You belong wherever you decide to stand. The words hung between them, sincere and heavy. A gust of wind swept through, catching her hair. She smiled faintly, brushing a strand from her cheek. Careful, Ethan. If you keep saying things like that, I might forget this is all pretend. He looked at her, eyes dark but gentle. Maybe that would not be such a bad thing. Oh. For the first time that night, Maya felt something stir inside her that had nothing to do with money, pride, or performance. It was simple, dangerous, real. And as the music swelled inside the ballroom, she realized the line between pretending and feeling had already begun to blur. The next morning, sunlight crept through the tall windows of Ethan's penthouse. Maya sat at the edge of the long dining table, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The place was quiet, almost too quiet, filled with polished furniture and expensive art that looked untouched. Ethan walked in, his tie half loosened, still looking impossibly composed. "You can relax," he said softly. "You survived the gala." She smiled faintly. "Barely. I am still not sure if it was a party or a battlefield." He laughed under his breath and sat across from her. "For what it is worth, you did perfectly. Even the press called you mysterious and graceful." "Although," she rolled her eyes, "they must not have seen me trip on that carpet." He smiled. They saw confidence, not clumsiness. For a moment, silence settled between them. Maya traced her finger along the edge of the coffee cup. "So," she said carefully, "does this mean our contract is over?" Ethan leaned back, watching her. "Technically, yes, but the photographs are everywhere. People will expect to see us again." Her brow furrowed. "And you care what people expect?" "Unfortunately, yes. That is how business works." She studied him for a moment. "Then maybe your business needs a little honesty." Her words landed like a quiet challenge. Ethan looked away, then nodded slowly. "You might be right, but honesty is a luxury in my world." Before she could reply, Claire entered the room carrying a tablet. "Mr. Cole, the press is requesting confirmation about your relationship with Miss Tran," she said. Ethan glanced at Maya. "Tell them no comment." "Oh." Claire hesitated, then nodded and left. Maya rose from her seat, setting the cup down gently. "Thank you for keeping your word," she said. "You paid me fairly, and you were respectful. But this was supposed to be one night, Ethan." He looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. "I know," he said quietly, "but one night can change more than either of us planned." She gathered her coat and moved toward the door. When she turned back, her tone softened. "You should learn to live somewhere smaller," she said with a half smile. "Places like this feel like they echo too much." He smiled faintly. "Maybe they do." As the elevator doors closed behind her, Ethan remained standing in the empty room, the echo of her footsteps fading. He glanced toward the vase on the counter. The single white rose he had given her still stood there, its petals beginning to open. For the first time in years, the silence of his home felt less like peace and more like loneliness. Days passed, but the headlines did not fade. Photographs from the gala filled the internet. Ethan Cole, with an unknown woman whose smile stole the spotlight. Articles speculated, gossip spread, and reporters camped outside his office building. Maya tried to ignore it, focusing on her shifts at the cafe, but even there the whispers followed her. Customers pointed, coworkers stared, and Lila leaned across the counter one afternoon, eyes wide. "Maya, that picture, was that really you?" Maya sighed. "It was one night, Lila. That is all." But her voice betrayed a tremor she could not hide. That same evening, as she closed up the cafe, a familiar black car stopped by the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the door. "Miss Tran," he said politely. "Mr. Cole would like to speak with you." She hesitated. "Tell him I am busy." He asked me to give you this," the driver said, handing her a folded newspaper. The front page showed Ethan at a press conference, defending her name. The headline read, "Ethan Cole denies rumors, calls companion a woman of integrity." Maya's heart pounded. Before she could respond, the driver added quietly, "He said you could come if you wish." "Or not." She looked down the empty street, then nodded. "Take me to him." Hein Frim. The car wound through downtown until they reached a riverside restaurant closed for the night. Ethan stood on the patio, the city lights shimmering across the water behind him. He looked tired but determined. "Maya," he said as she stepped out, "thank you for coming." She crossed her arms. You did not give me much choice, showing up like that. He smiled faintly. I thought you deserved to know the truth. The truth about what? She asked. About why I asked you that night, he said. It was never about revenge. It was about trying to prove to myself that I could feel something genuine again. Maya looked away. You could have just told me that instead of hiring me. I did not know how, he admitted. People do not do favors in my world without expecting something in return. For a moment, neither spoke. The night air carried the scent of rain and river water. Ethan stepped closer. I know this is not your world, and you have every reason to walk away. But I would like to see you again without any contracts, without pretending. Maya studied his face, searching for the arrogance she once thought defined him. It was gone. What she saw instead was sincerity, quiet and disarming. She exhaled slowly. One coffee, that is all. His lips curved slightly. Then it is a start. As she turned to leave, a soft rain began to fall, gentle and steady. Neither of them moved for a long time. The river shimmered under the lights, and for the first time, Ethan felt something that did not need a signature to be real. The following Saturday morning, the cafe was quieter than usual. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air as Maya wiped the counter. Her mind was still tangled in the conversation by the river. Ethan had asked to see her again. No contracts, no pretending. She had agreed to one coffee. Just one. At exactly 10 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed. Ethan walked in, dressed casually for the first time since she met him. A simple gray sweater, dark jeans, and no entourage. The sight of him startled her more than she wanted to admit. He smiled gently. You look surprised. She tried to sound calm. I thought billionaires did not wait in line for coffee. Maybe I am trying something new, he said. They took a table near the window. For a while, they just talked about ordinary things. Maya told him about her mother's treatment, the endless bills, and her small dream of owning a bookstore cafe someday. Ethan listened quietly, not as a man used to giving orders, but as someone who wanted to understand. He shared a few pieces of his own life, fragments of childhood spent moving from city to city, and how building his company had cost him more than money. When he spoke about loneliness, his voice softened. People think success fills every empty space, he said. It does not, it just makes the silence louder. Maya looked at him then, seeing the person behind the polished name. For the first time, she smiled without hesitation. You talk like a man who has finally figured that out. Maybe I am just learning from the right teacher, he replied. Their meetings became a quiet routine after that. They met for walks, for coffee, sometimes for nothing more than a conversation that lasted hours. It was simple, real, and steady. Maya began to forget that their story had started as an arrangement. But not everyone had forgotten. One evening, while Ethan was in a meeting, Vanessa appeared at the cafe. She wore another perfect dress, her smile sharp as glass. So, she said smoothly, you are the waitress who turned a pity date into a fairy tale. Maya wiped her hands on her apron. Is there something you want, Vanessa? Oh, I just came to warn you, Vanessa said sweetly. Men like Ethan do not change. They get bored. And when they do, they find someone else to play pretend with. Maya met her eyes calmly. Then maybe that is his mistake to make, not yours to predict. For the first time, Vanessa's smile faltered. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. When Ethan arrived later that night, Maya did not mention the encounter. But something unspoken lingered between them, a question neither dared to voice. How long could something real survive in a world built on appearances? As the cafe lights dimmed and the door locked behind them, Maya looked out into the quiet street and whispered to herself, maybe real love is not about belonging in the same world. Maybe it is about choosing to stay anyway. The next week began with a tension neither of them could name. Ethan's company, Cole Industries, was preparing for a major partnership announcement, and the press was watching every move he made. Maya tried to stay out of the spotlight, but her name kept appearing in the headlines beside his. The label, "The Waitress Who Captured a Billionaire's Heart," followed her everywhere. At first, Ethan brushed off the gossip. But soon, the investors began to whisper. His assistant Claire brought him a report that morning, her tone grave. Sir, one of the board members questioned your judgment. They think your personal life might affect negotiations. Ethan's jaw tightened. My personal life is none of their concern. Claire hesitated. With respect, sir, when it becomes public, it is their concern. By afternoon, the rumors had reached the business networks. A headline scrolled across the television in his office. Cole's mystery girlfriend could cost him millions. Ethan muted the screen and leaned back in his chair, frustration tightening his chest. For the first time in months, he felt trapped again between duty and truth. That evening, he went to the café. Maya was cleaning tables when he walked in, still wearing his suit from the day. The moment she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. "Ethan, what happened?" He handed her his phone. The article was open on the screen. "They are saying I hired you again," he said quietly. "That you are part of some publicity stunt." Maya's heart sank. "Do they ever stop?" He shook his head. "Not when they smell weakness." "Why?" She set the phone down, anger flashing in her eyes. "Let them talk, Ethan. You do not owe them an explanation." "I owe my employees stability," he said firmly. "If the company collapses because of me, people lose their jobs. So what are you going to do?" He met her gaze. "I might have to make a statement. One that distances you from all of this." Her breath caught. "Distances me?" He looked pained. "Just until the deal closes. Then I can fix this." "No." Maya stepped back, disbelief and hurt colliding in her chest. "So after everything you are choosing them over me?" "It is not choosing," he said, his voice cracking. "It is surviving." She shook her head slowly. "That sounds like something the old Ethan would say, the man who hired a stranger to make a point." Silence filled the cafe. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping softly against the glass. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but hollow. "I am not your damage control, Ethan. I never was." She untied her apron and placed it on the counter. "Maybe this was pretend all along," she said. "Maybe I was just foolish enough to believe it could be real." He reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "Please, Maya, just give me time." She looked at him one last time, eyes filled with both love and exhaustion. "You have all the time in the world," she whispered. "You just do not have me in it." "Oh." Maya walked out into the rain, her figure fading into the glow of streetlights. Ethan stood frozen, the echo of her words sinking deep into the silence she left behind. When Claire arrived the next morning, she found him still in the office, staring at the same article, his untouched coffee cold on the desk. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole had everything to lose, and nothing left that mattered. 3 days passed, and the storm did not ease. The deal Ethan had been fighting for was collapsing. One investor had already withdrawn, citing instability in leadership. He sat in his office, the rain blurring the skyline behind him, a half-empty cup of coffee on the table. Claire entered quietly, a folder in her hand. "The board wants you to hold a press conference," she said softly. "They expect you to deny everything again." Ethan rubbed his temples. "And what would that change?" "It might save the company," she answered. He looked up slowly, his voice quiet but heavy. "Claire, tell me something. At what point does saving something stop being worth losing yourself for?" She hesitated, then said, "I think that depends on what you still have left to lose." When she left, the silence of the room pressed in on him. He reached into the drawer and pulled out the white rose, now dry and fragile. It had been days since Maya walked away, but the emptiness had only grown sharper. For the first time, he admitted to himself that he had driven away the only person who ever made him feel human. That evening, he made a decision. If the truth was going to cost him everything, then he would pay it. The next morning, the conference hall was packed with cameras, reporters, and flashing lights. Ethan walked onto the stage without a script, without the shield of corporate language he had always relied on. He adjusted the microphone, took a breath, and began. "There has been a lot said about me these past few weeks," he said, his voice calm but steady. "Some of it is true, and some of it is not. But there is one truth. I can no longer hide behind business statements." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "The woman you saw at that event, Maya Tran, was not part of a publicity stunt. She is not an employee, or a contract, or a performance. She is the reason I remembered what honesty feels like." The room fell completely still. He continued, his tone unwavering. "I will not deny her, and I will not pretend that my life or my company should matter more than integrity. If this costs me deals or partnerships, then so be it. I built this company from the ground up once. I can do it again, but I will not rebuild myself out of lies." The reporters exploded with questions, but Ethan stepped back from the podium. He had said what needed to be said. The truth was out. Hours later, the press conference played on every news channel. Maya was at the cafe, cleaning the counter, when Lila pointed at the television mounted above the register. "Maya, is that him?" Maya turned and saw Ethan on the screen, his voice clear, his words echoing through the small room. Her eyes widened, her heart pounding. When the clip ended, the cafe fell silent. Lila whispered, "He just told the whole world about you." Maya stood motionless for a moment. Then she untied her apron, grabbed her coat, and ran out into the street. The air was cool, the rain soft but steady. She did not know where she was going, only that she had to see him. At that same moment, Ethan stood alone outside the building, reporters shouting his name behind him. But he was not listening to them. He was looking at the horizon, at the faint break of sunlight cutting through the clouds. For the first time in years, the air felt clean. He had told the truth, and somehow, that felt like the beginning of something worth losing everything for. The city was glowing under a late spring sunset when Maya finally found him. Ethan stood by the riverside, the same place where they had once spoken beneath the rain. Now the air was calm, touched by the gold of the sinking Sunday. He turned when he heard her footsteps. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You saw it," he said quietly. "I did," she answered. "You did not have to do that." "Oh, yes, I did," he said simply. "It was the only way to make things right." She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You could lose everything, Ethan. The company, the investors." He smiled faintly. "I already lost the only thing that mattered." What is the point of success if you cannot be proud of who you are? Maya looked at him, searching his face for the man she once met, a stranger who offered her a deal on a rainy night. What she saw now was different. New walls, new armor, just truth. "You have changed," she said quietly. He shook his head. "No, you just helped me remember who I was supposed to be." The wind carried the sound of the river. Maya hesitated, then reached into her coat pocket. She unfolded a small piece of paper, an old copy of the contract they had signed weeks ago. She held it out between them. "This was supposed to be the end," she said. He looked down at it, then back at her. "Then let us rewrite it." "Ah." Ethan took out a pen, and with slow, deliberate strokes, crossed out the printed words. In their place, he wrote a single line. No expiration date. Only honesty. He handed it to her with a quiet smile. "I do not want an arrangement, Maya. I want a promise." She felt her eyes sting, but she smiled through it. "And what exactly are you promising, Mr. Cole?" He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "That I will never again ask you to pretend. That I will never again hide behind money or pride. Just you and me, honest and real." The sun dipped lower, painting the water in shades of fire and gold. For a long heartbeat, they stood in silence before Maya finally said, "Then, I guess I can agree to that." Months later, the headlines changed. Coal Industries had not fallen. It had transformed. Ethan launched a new foundation dedicated to supporting small community businesses, the first check written to Maya's Cafe, now under her name. The sign above the door read Heart and Bean Cafe, in partnership with the Coal Foundation. On the opening day, the same white rose sat in a vase near the register. Ethan stood beside her, helping serve coffee to customers who smiled without knowing their story. When the last customer left, Maya turned to him. "Do you ever miss that old world, the parties, the suits, the noise?" He smiled. "Not for a second." She laughed softly. "Good, because I do not think they would let you wear that apron." He looked down at the smudge of coffee on his sleeve and grinned. "Then I guess I will have to live with it." Outside, the evening light spilled through the windows, warm and bright. Ethan reached across the counter, his fingers brushing hers. "No contracts," he said. "Just this." She nodded, eyes shining. "Just this." And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were pretending. The man who had once paid for company had finally earned something priceless. Not through power, not through wealth, but through truth. Love that was real, and a peace that no business could ever buy.